What's up, y'all? It's Zach with Living Corporate, and wow, we have a really special episode for y'all today. So typically you hear myself or Ade interview a guest, and we ask them a series of questions, and then we do like a wrap-up thing, or it'll be like a one-on-one, and then we wrap up right after that interview. This episode's a little bit different. I have a mentor, a friend, and a colleague named Liz Sweigart, and she is a member of the LGBT community, and she's agreed to have her own guests come on and really talk about queer identity. And so it's really exciting that I'm able to introduce you all to her in this short series that we have in June, and I'm just excited for y'all to hear. So we're going to go in a break. The next thing you're going to hear is this interview with Liz Sweigart, and then we're going to wrap from there. Okay? All right. See y'all next time.
Hi, Brendon. Thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me today. How are you doing?
Hi, good. How are you?
Very well. Happy Pride.
Yeah, same to you.
Thanks so much. Well, one of the great things that we've talked about, and we have the chance now to talk about a little bit together, is identity and experience and how that's translated, particularly for you, in your career in corporate America.
Sure.
And, as you and I talked in our original conversation about maturity and growth and development, it was so wonderful for me to hear from you, and it resonated with me so much, how in your experience you've seen yourself grow over time and seen how not only you identify, but also how you present that identity. And then
Sure.
how you respond to the way that others view your identity. And as a queer woman myself, who is in a heterosexual marriage and has negotiated, the spectrum of identity and how that's received, it's so refreshing to be able to feel at home and feel belonging with someone who also recognizes their experience as growth over time. So
Sure.
I was wondering if maybe for our listeners, you could recap a bit about, how you've come to identify and know yourself and express that.
Sure, thank you. So just for the listeners' sake, I'm 40 years old. I am a bisexual African-American male. I am currently unmarried, single, and I'm not currently in a relationship. I guess definitely male. I don't. My gender has kind of always been known to me, but from a very young age, I would even say probably around the age 5 or 6, I always knew that I liked boys as well as girls. But I grew up in an environment. Come from a Jamaican family living in Houston, Texas area, extremely conservative Christian upbringing. Found myself in a lot of spaces where they're just, expressing a sexual identity that was anything other than straight and heteronormative was, just unheard of. There were really no examples in my personal life, known examples of, hey, here's someone that I personally know, someone that I can personally access who identifies as homosexual and expresses themselves in that way. For me, growing up, anything other than that was something you saw on TV. Being gay in particular was something largely associated with white people. I didn't know anybody in my personal life, or even in the media. There wasn't anybody who you could look at and say, oh, this is an example of a black gay person. And outside of maybe certain entertainers, who I won't really go into names because I don't think that's necessary, that may have expressed, presented themselves in a way that people may have, tacitly or openly acknowledged was not the typical, straight, red-blooded, heterosexual male. That just wasn't something that, was a part of my everyday experience.
Yeah, the way you describe that, it really resonates with me looking, growing up and seeing so few representations of any people of color in the queer sphere.
Sure.
And having grown up in New York City and being raised during the height of the AIDS crisis, and seeing just the depths of inhumanity that people are capable of, it was particularly powerful for me to see how few females were being represented, and there were almost no femme queers, and
Sure.
so for me, in a way, you're describing your experience as a young child. I remember similarly being young and realizing that I too liked boys and girls, and thinking at a certain point that I only had a choice between the binary, that it was a light switch. It was one or the other. It was on or off.
Right.
And
Sure.
and having that kind of awakening that I could define my identity, and that I could start to seek out and find role models. That was
Sure.
something that was really powerful for me.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So how in your life did that happen for you? Who were there people who were early role models for you, or early supporters? How did you kind of bridge that point from your adolescence into your adulthood?
So, I would actually say, for me, some of those internal conversations about, coming to grips with my identity probably didn't happen for me till, I would say, my 20s. Certainly, when I was looking to go to college, I'd always told myself I wanted to go somewhere where I was, surrounded by people who didn't look like me, didn't think like me. I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to work in a space or I knew that I wanted to work in a space where I was likely going to be surrounded by people who didn't think like me, didn't have the same upbringing as me, and I didn't want to, experience some type of culture shock when I joined the workplace. So I wanted my college experience to kind of prepare me for that. But interestingly enough, in college, while I may have definitely, internally kind of accepted kind of who I was, I certainly wasn't, open and out, as people would describe. So in my 20s, I grew up in the Houston area. In my 20s, I moved to Dallas after college. That's where I got my best job offer with a company that I had interned with before graduation. And so I moved up there, and that was kind of probably where I slowly started to accept who I was. I work in the engineering and construction industry on the infrastructure side of the business, and it's very much a conservative, largely conservative industry, despite some of the usual, I would say some of the usual ideals or cultures or values, I should say, that tend to be associated with conservative people or conservative ideologies. I worked in a largely conservative industry, but the guy who hired me, I came to discover, was actually a gay man, and he was a vice president in our company, and he was definitely out because everybody at the company knew, and he had actually, hosted, events at his house where people, met his partner, and despite, he was a Caucasian man, but despite all that, I still never necessarily felt comfortable to kind of share that with people because, being a black man, I think you kind of learn, there are certain sensibilities that you'll develop, especially when you find yourself surrounded by people who don't look like you and think like you, and particularly navigating the corporate America space as a large, black man. You kind of learn, you kind of might err on the side of hey, I won't reveal too much about my personal life because, you never know what might be used against you, especially if you work in an environment that's cutthroat or, one where you've constantly got people jockeying for position to curry favor. And that was definitely the environment that I worked in. And so I would say in Dallas, while I was also kind of, starting off my career and kind of, being an adult, if you will, I also wasn't going to church regularly. And so during that time, I really kind of wrestled with some of the things I was brought up to believe as a Christian versus, this identity of mine, this fact that, hey, I like men and that's not going away. And I even went to the trouble of just, not really being unlike myself, but just really not even entertaining conversations about who I'm dating, who I'm interested in, or, what the dating scene was like, in an effort to kind of just, keep that under wraps. And despite all that, a rumor developed in the office that I was gay because I didn't openly talk about who I was dating. You wouldn't go to my office or my cubicle and see pictures of, a family or anything like that. And, despite not really opening myself up to those conversations, people assumed that I was anyway. And so I think just over time, I really just kind of came to realize that, hey, regardless of what you do, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. So you might as well kind of just accept who you are. And so recently, I just turned 40 at the top of the year. I guess last year I kind of felt like, hey, there are people, close friends and family who probably suspect just because, here it is, still single, no children, really haven't really been dating any women, certainly haven't brought any women around as a girlfriend or, possible marriage material. And it just really didn't feel like I didn't want to go into my 40s with this being unclear, especially, you have people who are trying to set me up with someone. And, it's just kind of like, well, I think I need to let people know because I need you guys to stop setting me up with, people that I'm not interested in. And so I just said, hey, I've gone through this. I've wrestled with this on a personal level, wrestled with this on a spiritual level, because I did find myself back to the church, but I found myself back in communities where it was just kind of like, hey, your sexuality is something that you're created with and not something that needs to be repressed, hidden, or kept under wraps for the sake of other people's comfort, and certainly not for the sake of or for being accepted by the Creator. And so I just said, you know what, I live, the people that know me, anyone who's friends with me know that, I don't live, I do tend to live out loud. I'm very, forthright with my opinions. I'm not a shrinking daisy when it comes to politics or culture or that type of thing. And I just said, hey, it's out there, just so you know, just so we're clear. And so that's kind of been what the past, I guess, year and a half has been for me, just kind of saying, hey, this is who I am. And most people that I talk to are kind of like, yeah, we kind of suspected, stereotypes kind of being what they are. I've always been someone who's been creative, someone that's been artistic, someone who's very passionate about certain things that tend to be passionate to people of the LGBT community, whereas I guess people thought that I was maybe sympathetic or empathetic with the community, not realizing that I'm actually a part of that community. And when I speak in defense of those people, I'm speaking in defense of myself.
And thank you, thank you for the way, especially that you put that, especially around how you talk about coming to a feeling of belonging. Something that has always sapped so much of my energy has been trying to fit in and the sense of fitting in versus belonging. And,
right.
And essentially what I heard in your description is many years of fitting in and squeezing yourself into the form and the shape and the space that others wanted to give you. And
sure.
Perhaps as your happy birthday 40th present to yourself, it's now belonging and creating that space for yourself.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So when I think about you touched on several, there's so much there. You touched on the topic really of Black masculinity, and
sure.
Again, I clearly as a cisgender queer white woman, I do not have lived experience.
Right.
I have, from my observation and what has been shared with me, I recognize that there are stereotypes within the Black community, as well as the stereotypes and biases that are forced upon Black men from the majority, from
Sure.
white culture.
Sure.
And I'm curious, how have you, as you've come into this identity, in one sense, you and I have both in a way benefited from being able to pass in certain social situations and
right.
not be immediately identifiable as queer.
Sure.
I am able to pass in all social situations as white because I clearly am.
Yeah.
How have you experienced that that difference between being in all spaces, clearly being identifying as Black, and then in other spaces not having your identity seen, and how has that dichotomy, how has that tension been for you? How have you experienced that?
That's a really good question. It kind of hits me in a bunch of different ways. I think, you certainly talked about, Black masculinity, and certainly my experience has not only been informed by the fact that, obviously anybody looking at me is not going to think that I'm anything other than Black, but also there's the additional rub of being an immigrant. My parents, were both born in Jamaica. I was born in Jamaica and I came over as a baby. And so kind of getting back to what I said, got a couple of things working with you, as an immigrant, there's this desire or this goal or this drive to make it, if you will, to be an American success story. So you come over here and you're presented with images from the culture, white, American culture, say, hey, this is what, successful people do. This is what immigrants should aspire to. So you've got that playing into my development. Then you've also got, the unique challenges of being Black in the United States. I mean, we can talk all day about, the lived experiences of African Americans in this country. There's external pressure for, you to not, to live above or to prove the stereotypes that prevail and exist about Black people wrong by, being someone who, stays in school and makes good grades and goes to a good school and gets good money and, be this citizen and prove to people that, hey, the negative stereotypes of Black men on TV are not real or they don't apply to everyone. And, this idea that, oh, I'm one of the good ones, I'm one of the ones who did things the right way. And, you can feel safe around me and you can feel comfortable around me and that's okay. And then of course, there's also the Christian, the religious factor. I mean, you've got, pretty much American Christianity in particular is definitely informed by whiteness and white supremacy, and even in religious communities that are mostly Black, that such white supremacy is so pervasive that even in those spaces, presenting as anything other than a straight, masculine Black male, you've got pressure to live up to those stereotypes. And I think, coming up, people would make jokes about, oh, well, these things, men don't do, and that's a man law violation, and it could be something as innocent as being the only male clarinet player in a 300-piece band, and just kind of this idea that there's a masculine way to do things that really should not necessarily be masculine or feminine. They're just things that people do. But in this society, any way that we can categorize people and put them in boxes and exclude them and feel superior to them, those are the things that, whether it's a small group or a large group, we just as a, human beings seem to just really have a gift for doing. And so I think one of the things I kind of realized, especially as I began to find my internal voice and my external voice, is that, you really have to live this life on your own terms. You have to be okay with yourself. You have to accept yourself, and you have to be, you have to be comfortable with, the way that you're oriented. And I think, as I've gotten older, it's just kind of like, hey, this is my personality. I'm not going to try to appear more butch or try to appear, more or less butch or whatever it is to fit in what people's expectations of me are. I mean, this is the man that I was created to be. I feel like the way that I was created, there's a purpose in that. There's significance to that. And in order to realize whatever that significance is, I've got to be my authentic self. And so, whatever that looks like, whatever that presents like, as long as this is 100% authentic me, this is what it is, and you can take it or leave it.
And I love the authenticity focus of that, and how you also express the sentiment I know that you and I have shared in prior conversation, that we are purposefully and intentionally made, and we're good enough for our Creator and our mom, and everybody else can get in line.
Sure.
So when you think about how far, in a sense, how far you've come, and listening to your story, and again, I can't thank you enough for sharing it. Well, trusting me to share it with me, and then trusting our platform and our listeners to share it. Mm-hmm. I hear this incredible growth and maturity, and in a sense, I also hear a weight being lifted. I hear a liberation coming from letting go, in a sense, of the expectations that you can't control, and letting go of the stereotypes and the boxes and the labels that others are trying to force on you.
Right.
And so I wonder what, as you look to your future, as you look now, to, a strong, nearly 20-year corporate career, and you look toward your legacy and making your mark.
Sure.
What is your hope for the future, and what in terms of your own personal growth, where do you want to see yourself get to, and what is the legacy? What is it that you want to create in the space that you're in?
Well, that's a good question. I just, I think kind of just keeping, this probably sounds cliche, but corporate America has these unwritten rules, these unwritten expectations of people. And I've seen so many people kind of come into this area not realizing, the inherent politics, the positioning, the jockeying for position, all those things that people do, that some people, certainly people who are privileged to kind of grow up under people who are familiar with the corporate America space. I'm talking about people who aren't necessarily immigrants. Their families have been here for years, and they've experienced success, and they kind of understand, kind of how the game goes, and are able to create more access for their own through, the privilege, and then whatever stuff else they're able to accomplish and themselves and the opportunities that they're able to create for the people, their loved ones, and the people that are coming up behind them. I just want to keep it real. I still work I work in an environment where, I'm kind of a guarded person, just because, I know I've seen what happens when people kind of get, I guess, a little too familiar, a little too comfortable, and kind of assume that everyone working with them has their best interest. And, I know that that's really not the case. But, if it were to come up in my, conversations, about who I am and even what I believe and what are these things, I'm at a point to where I don't feel like I don't need to mince words. I don't need to repress something. I don't need to bite my tongue. Now, do I wear my sexual orientation or my politics or my beliefs on my sleeve? No, I don't. But, I think there's still a tendency to believe that, hey, in this business, everybody thinks the same. And even if, we don't all look the same, this is the general culture. And I think what I'd like my legacy to be is just, hey, the person that you're created to be, you shouldn't have to diminish any part of yourself for, professional accomplishment. I think some people might hear that and think, oh, well, that means you can come to work dressed any type of way, and you can, say anything you want and do anything you want. That's not what I'm saying. But I still think that even kind of respecting, the rules of corporate America for your sake, and maybe for the sake of the people whose lives you're there to impact, you can still show them that, hey, you can still be your authentic self. You can still live in your truth. You can still be excellent. At your craft or whatever gifts you have or whatever your particular calling is. You can still be 100% yourself and still, be a success. I mean, you don't have to compromise. You shouldn't have to diminish yourself in any respect just to get ahead. And so I hope that, whatever the next 20 years brings from my professional life, whether I, stay in this business or get out of it altogether or keep one foot in and one foot out, I would hope that, anybody that I mentor, anybody who, in our professional paths, I've, we've crossed paths and I've had an effect on them. I'd hope they think, you know what, rain or shine, whether things are great or things are bad, you got 100% Brendon. He had his convictions. He had, the things that he believed. He was a rock, but he wasn't also just, stubborn and couldn't, be presented with new information and have his views evolve based on, those things. I just, I think, I bring or at least what I guess professionally, I think I bring kind of like a quiet strength. And hey, Brendon's always kind of there just doing his thing and getting it done and, finding ways to persevere. But I never thought that he was, fake, or I never thought that he, pretended that he wasn't who he was, or found that he had to act differently around certain people to get where he needed to be. I'm a complex, multifaceted person. And, while I don't necessarily, show all my cards all the time, I want you to feel like, hey, I knew who Brendon was, and what I got was real Brendon, and whether I liked it and whether I liked it or not, this is who it was. This is what I got. And, he was always real with it. And I think those that being yourself, whether it's, loud or quietly, I think people connect to that. I think we're a bunch of souls, and whatever light is in each of us, the light that's in other people will connect to that if you're being your authentic self. And so I hope that's what my legacy is.
I can't think of a better legacy, and frankly, I can't think of more inspiring or encouraging words, not just for underrepresented queers, but for all those who are feeling marginalized, or that they cannot bring their full, true, genuine, and authentic selves to the spaces that they inhabit.
Right.
So, Brendon, I can't thank you enough for sharing your story, and for blessing me certainly, and blessing this audience just with the accumulated wisdom and also hope, because that's something that we really are in short supply of. And
absolutely.
And this is Pride Month, and when I think about what does it mean to be proud? What does it mean to be out? Something that you said really struck me, and that's that it means to be authentic in all spaces.
All right.
And so, thank you for being that here, and being that every day.
Oh no, thank you for the opportunity just to kind of share. I mean, I don't, you never know what a person might hear or might resonate with a person that's listening to your story. So thanks to you for the opportunity to kind of share, and also to I guess this probably would be my first Pride Month where I'm acknowledging it as a part of the community. I can't think of other than the typical Pride activities that a lot of people engage in. This is definitely something special, and I'm glad for the opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you again so much, Brendon.
Thank you, Lizzie.
Living Corporate is a podcast by Living Corporate LLC. Our logo was designed by David Dawkins. Our theme music was produced by Ken Brown. Additional music production by Antoine Franklin for Musical Elevation. Post-production is handled by Jeremy Jackson. Got a topic suggestion? Email us at livingcorporatepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us online on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and living-corporate.com. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned.